Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a lying Karen pulls a gun on me claiming that my family is trespassing on her private beach. Before we start, please check out my podcast for exclusive episodes by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon and all others. And now let's dive right in. Our title story starts like this. In a bunch of countries, locals might try to trick tourists out of their money or even to just flat out mug them. That might not seem relevant because this story takes place in a Dominican Republic, DR for short, and I am from there. The thing is that I moved with my family from one part of the DR to another area, and long story short, we are pretty light-skinned while this new area is made up of a majority of darker-skinned people. It can get complicated, but this is not the story for that. Just know that this is a new area, and since people don't know us and we are light-skinned, we can get mistaken for tourists easily. Now, the DR has some of the nicest beaches in the world, and you can be sure that my family loves to take advantage of that. If we could go to the beach daily instead of work and school, we would all be there constantly. Nice clear water to swim in and warm sand to relax on. We went to the closest beach to us and started doing our thing and getting ready to go swimming. That was when a woman who I will call Karen for this story entered. And yes, sadly, Karens do exist here in the DR and are not only in America like some people believe. Also keep in mind, a bunch of other people were on the beach, but none too close to us and Karen. Karen in English, what do you think you're doing? Me in DR Spanish, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going swimming with my kids and spending the day on the beach, just like everybody else that came here today. The rest of the conversation took place in DR Spanish. Karen, oh, you actually speak the language. Still, this beach is my private property and you don't have the right to be here. Me? So all of these other people on the beach are your personal guests, huh? Karen, that or they paid like they are supposed to. I'm not only the owner of this beach, but I'm a cop and I can have you arrested for trespassing. Unless, of course, you wanted to arrange something now and make the entire thing go away. It was at this point I knew she assumed that I was a tourist despite speaking the language and trying to scam me out of money. Me? You're crazy if you think I'm paying you money to be on the beach. This is a public beach and you're not a cop. I am not giving you any money and I'm not leaving. I came to enjoy the beach with my family and that's what we are gonna do. Karen, I don't know where you're from, but around here people know how to behave. They know that you need to give me money to use the beach, or I can make the rest of your stay here a nightmare. That was when she pulled a handgun out of her bag and I realized that she was not just a Karen, but also insane. She was pointing it at me and kept changing her mind about what she wanted. My guess is this is the first time she had things get this far and was getting flustered about it. First she wanted us to leave the beach and then wanted us to give her money. It shifted to her wanting us to leave the beach but not take any of our belongings or wallets with us. You can be sure I was not letting her rob me despite her having a gun. If it was pointed at my wife or kids, it might have been different, but I've dealt with worse and she didn't seem to have the nerve to actually shoot the gun, or so I thought. So anyway, she took the gun aim off of me and instead pointed it up into the air before firing. It scared my family and it even made Karen herself jump. She still was not giving up on her position because at this point she had gotten herself in too deep. All eyes nearby were now on her after hearing the gun go off. Bad news for her was that not too far there was an actual police officer that heard the shot go off and came running onto the scene thinking an actual shooting was going on. Police, drop your weapon! Karen did not drop her weapon and instead she froze with it in her hands and made the extremely dumb decision to try and double down to the police officer. When he asked again for her to drop her gun and she didn't, he went in and knocked her out for his own and everybody else's safety. He made sure that everybody was okay and I explained to him what she was trying to do and that the shot he heard was into the air. Police don't always stop locals from trying to scam visitors because they just don't have that kind of manpower to handle it all. When a gun is involved though, the entire story changes and they make sure that the person is arrested. Karen got herself together after she was put into handcuffs and trying to argue with the police officer that she was not trying to scam us and instead trying to defend herself because the tourists were racist to her. That was when I finally turned to her and answered her rhetorical question from earlier. When she mentioned not knowing where I was from, etc., I told her exactly where I was from and that I was not a tourist or from another country. We were just light-skinned and knew exactly the kind of scam she was trying to pull on us. She then started to say that we set her up by not telling her that we were from the DR, and if we did she would have stopped, and so on. I told her flat out that she was an idiot because we had been speaking DR Spanish the entire time and there was zero indication that we were not local. The police took Karen away for questioning and to check to see if the gun was gotten illegally. And by the way, Ripe Stars, even if it was true that OP was a tourist, the thing Karen tried to pull here is obviously still illegal and not okay. Anyway, it was of course illegal and turned out she got it from her boyfriend who had gotten it from some local gang he was in. Meaning that she was already in a ton of trouble and they did not even start charging her for the scams she was trying to pull to rob people just for trying to go to the beach. She was literally endangering children and unloading a shot even if it was just in the air. She ended up behind bars when all was said and done, and she is going to be there for a long time. As soon as anything in her arrest linked her to a gang, even indirectly, it was a one-way ticket to jail. My family has since been to that beach many times and nobody has tried to scam us anymore. And here, Ripe Stars, I guess these entitled Karens don't only exist in Western countries, but they are pretty much international at this point. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment if you want to support me. And now we will continue with the next one. This one is a revenge story and it starts like this. I have dwarfism and this often leads to weird interactions in public, especially with children. Sometimes a kid comes up to me to ask why I am so short and I have a pre-prepared response for that, but most of the time they just loudly ask their parents why I am so short. Usually the parents will awkwardly drag their kids away, telling them not to comment on people in public, which is sad but understandable. I like the parents who just say something about how some people are born like this, and even though we look a bit different, we are still regular people just like everyone else. Sometimes I hear a gem like, I bet he shrank in the wash. What I cannot stand is when people try to use me to parent their kids. I'm sure you can think of ways to convince your kids to finish their plate at dinner that don't involve pointing at a dwarf in public and saying, that's what happens when you leave food on your plate. Or, he didn't listen to his mummy when she told him to eat all vegetables. It is rude, it is humiliating, and it teaches your kid that difference is a bad thing and that people are at fault for their differences or disabilities. It just pisses me off. So, a few days ago I was in public and a kid who was maybe 4 or 5 years old was acting out and his mom was clearly struggling to keep him under control. So she pointed to me and told her son that I was one of Santa's elves and I was watching him and would tell Santa about his behavior. The kid's name was on a keyring on his backpack, so I just said, it's okay Hunter, you're already on the nice list and Santa told me you're getting an iPad this Christmas. Hunter was excited, his mom was not. And that is one of the most innocent, beautiful instances of petty revenge I've ever heard. Anyway, the next one is titled Nasty Karen Encounter. Since I am deaf, I rarely have to deal with annoying Karens because I rely on American Sign Language as an anti-Karen trick, but today one went out of her way to get police involved. So to start, I borrowed my dad's minivan. He has a handicap plate, but since I don't have a handicap, deaf doesn't qualify for handicap parking, I park in normal spots instead. My dad was not with me today, so there's another reason not to park there. When I stopped at a Walmart store for a quick shopping, I found an empty spot next to a handicapped spot very close to the doors. I had just gotten out when a Karen stopped behind my minivan and started yelling at me. I could not understand what she was saying and used my anti-Karen trick, which is ASL. I signed, I cannot understand you, but she kept yelling at me and pointing at the van. I ignored her and went into the store. I came out about 15 minutes later to see her still blocking my minivan and a police car coming in. Thankfully for Officer Smiley, not real name, he seemed to be smiling a lot even with crappy Karen and 90 Fahrenheit heat. He can use his lips well, so I was able to understand him without needing ASL or a deaf interpreter. It's when I found out she called because I illegally parked in a non-handicapped spot. I'm like, the hell? I explained the minivan belonged to my dad who does use handicapped spots, but since he was not with me and I don't need a handicapped spot, technically I'm not supposed to use the handicapped spot and just parked in a normal one. Karen's reasoning was I had to use a handicapped spot because of the handicap plate and it was illegal for a car with handicap plates to park in non-handicapped spots. The officer thought she was just mad because I had a great non-handicapped spot in an otherwise crowded parking lot and she didn't want to walk halfway across the lot in this heat. She was hoping I would move like she demanded and her mind broke because I did not move. I was free to go and I saw Officer Smiley hand her a ticket, I guess for misuse of 911 services. I still had to wait for her to move her car so I could go home and type this up. So if you're the woman with a dark-colored pixie-cut hair driving a silver Camry who called police on a deaf person in Walmart parking lot today, F you. And the next one is a story about a mega entitled Karen. This happened Saturday night during rush hour. I'm the front of house manager of a Chinese restaurant that has really busy to go. One of my hostesses handed me the phone and said, "This lady, she's not gonna wait for all her order and wants to speak to a manager," even though we were quoting 40 minutes. Conversation went like this. Me, "Hi, this is the manager. Unfortunately, I cannot get your order out before our wait time as our kitchen is super busy." Karen, "Put my order first. I need it now." Me, "I'm sorry, I cannot do that." Karen, "You don't understand. My daughter is going on national TV at 7 PM. It was 6:45 at this point, and it's gonna be a celebrity, and I need it now. I will pay you extra." Me, "I don't think you understand. It's not an issue of money. I have about 50 plus open to go orders right now and a full dining room of 150 people. If I told the kitchen to put your order first, which is unfair to everyone else, I could not get an order that large out before 7 PM. Karen in the most snooty, mocking, high-pitched voice, You have 50 orders and a full dining room. Good for you. You guys are doing so well. I don't think you understand. My daughter is going on national TV in 15 minutes and I need food for everyone." Me, "Well, I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill that order for you. Have a great night." Click. And yeah, ripe stars, I guess if I would work in a restaurant like this, I would probably go crazy after just 1 or 2 days of dealing with entitled Karen customers. Props to anybody who can deal with entitled Karens for a long time, especially on a customer service basis. Either way, the next one is an Am I the Jerk story. I, 25 male, live in my family's cottage, which I was given ownership of. The cottage itself is a waterfront property facing a medium-sized lake. My family has been living here for generations as my great-grandpa originally bought it before passing it down, eventually leading to me. My neighbors are a different story as many of the people I have known since childhood have moved out. The houses that my neighbors once had been torn down and replaced with designer-style homes. With the construction of these homes came new neighbors and an HOA of which I'm not a member. My problem started with my next door neighbor Sophie, female 50 to 60, overfishing. One day after doing some canoe fishing, I was approached by Sophie on my beach. She started asking if it was legal to fish on the lake, to which I said it was as long as you pay the $25 per year license. After that, I said that I had to go as I had caught some fish and I wanted to start processing them for dinner, as it was getting late. After our conversation, I did not hear from her for over 2 weeks. My encounter with her this time was not in person, but through a letter. In this letter, she wrote about how dangerous fishing is to the environment and why I should stop. In response, I chose to simply chuck it in my recycling bin and ignore her as it was not worth my time. My most recent encounter was 2 days ago while I had some friends over. It was in the afternoon when I had ran back into the house for some more beers along with one of my friends. While grabbing the drinks, we heard a knock at the door. When I answered the door, it was Sophie and she had another letter. Before handing the letter, she said that she had tried to be diplomatic and now she has had enough and has a letter from the HOA. Admittedly, I was a bit tipsy at the time and in response I laughed and called her stupid for believing the HOA can do anything before closing the door on her. After sobering up, I feel conflicted. On one hand, I feel that I was justified in my actions because my fishing is none of her business. On the other hand, I feel that I could have dealt with her in a more tactful way. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? Comment number 1 said, "Not the a-hole, she is bordering on harassment." Not only that, but I'm sure she is lying as the HOA knows you are not a member, which would mean they cannot do anything. Not only that, an HOA cannot control how often and where you fish. This woman is the reason a vast majority of Americans refuse to live in an area with an HOA. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. This reminds me of a situation experienced by my friend who lived and worked on a farm that has been in his family for multi-generations. Over time, surrounding land got developed into luxury subdivisions and the new neighbors who paid top dollar for pastoral homes fussed and complained about the sounds and smells of the animals on his farm. And the next one is titled, "Your Backyard Belongs to Me." This happened a while back and I was not present for the majority of the convos, so I will just tell from memory. For context, my father inherited an older house from my grandparents after my grandmother died, and my grandfather started to have nothing to do. After they moved in, neighborhoods began to pop up around the house and most of the new neighbors were really nice. However, my closest neighbors are very entitled. So anyway, my house is a medium-sized house, but we have a 2-acre backyard. On multiple occasions, people have asked us to use our backyard for storage, but they were nice people and we did not really mind. However, as more houses began to pop up around our backyard, people began to suddenly feel attached to our backyard as if it was their own. They began to have picnics and photo shoots in our backyards, and this made us angry, but after we asked them to stop, they would stop for a while. However, there was an old lady that was an exception. This old lady was known around the neighborhood for sleeping around to get her way, so we already knew she was pretty crazy. EL asked us to store some gardening tools in our backyard, but there was still some land that was on her side of the property line, following her fence, so we allowed it. But repeatedly the tools kept piling onto our side. We repeatedly asked her to keep it on her side, but the problem would only be fixed for about 2 weeks before she did it again. This aggravated us, but not to the point to make a huge fuss. However, things changed very quickly. One day, EL asked if she could make a gate adding to her existing small fence to our backyard. When we asked why, EL said, "My dogs don't like pooping in your yard, so we need your yard, plus I like your yard." My father said, "Ma'am, this is not your property. You cannot just build a gate to our yard for your convenience." "But I need it. I know you don't use all of that huge yard you have. You need to share." "Ma'am, you're not building a gate to our yard. And now please get off of my property before I call the police." After this, EL pouted and left, and she complied. No gate was built, but EL entitled behavior never stopped. Over the next couple of weeks, she complained about our tree, saying it was dying the rustic scenery and we needed to change it. It is our yard, we should not have to change it to her liking. We just shut her down and we thought that was it, but oh boy, were we wrong. The worst was yet to come. We had a tree bordering the property line, and one day EL came onto our property without warning to ask if she could hire workers to come through our backyard because hers was too small. My parents were not home, so we were naturally scared. In a panic, I called my mom to tell her a woman was at the door and we did not know what to do. My mom told me to tell EL to get off of the property and my father would call her. After some conversation, we complied and she said the work would be done in about a week. She did not tell us when they would start working. We have dogs and they are very protective, so we needed to know when they would come so we could put them in a kennel. Now, that weekend I had to be in Alabama for a wrestling tournament. We had finished the wrestling tournament and started the 8-hour drive back when my mom got a phone call. It was my sister. The conversation went like this. "Mom, do you know that there are people in our backyard?" "What?" "Yeah, they have some tree trimming trucks and equipment. Should I put the dogs up?" "Yeah, put them up now. I will call you back." Now my mom continues to call EL on speakerphone. EL: "Yes? Why is there trucks in my backyard?" "We talked about this. I told you I would have workers trim the trees on my side through your yard." "You never told me they were coming today." "Calm down. An old lady like me cannot take your screaming. You need to respect me." Warning, some cursing comes next. Respect? All you have done is not respect us. You constantly use our yard as your own. "You cannot just yell at me. I'm your neighbor and you cannot just expect to have such a huge backyard and someone not want you to share it. You need to share it." "It's my backyard." "Well, maybe just be a little nicer next time and remember to share." EL proceeded to talk about how she was an old lady and deserved respect. She also spoke about how since she has been a nice neighbor, she deserved to be spoken nice to and not yelled at. My mother then quickly shut her down. Shortly after that, EL hung up on us. After this, my mom proceeded to tell my father of the events that just occurred. Now, my grandfather still lives with us and he helps us from time to time. My father called him and see if he could arrange a fence being made. My grandpa also had enough and had the perfect plan. My grandfather found rusty pieces of tin sheets and only prettied up the side that would face us, leaving the entitled neighbor with a rusty tin fence facing their home. We put these up shortly after the tree trimming was finished. At least she got the rustic look she wanted, and we never heard from her again. I guess she got the memo. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.